Welcome to Volume and Vision, the channel where powerful books become practical life lessons that can transform the way you think, work, and live. Take a moment and ask yourself a simple question. When was the last time you worked on something important without checking your phone, switching to another tab, thinking about something else, or getting distracted by a random notification? For many people, the answer is difficult to remember. We live in a world where distractions are everywhere. Every beep, every notification, every headline, and every endless scroll competes for one thing: our attention. And without realizing it, we slowly lose the ability to concentrate on what truly matters. The surprising part is that most people believe success depends mainly on intelligence, talent, or hard work. While those qualities certainly matter, there is another ability that quietly controls them all. That ability is focus. Today's book reveals why attention is one of the most valuable resources we possess and why learning to control it can change every area of our lives. Whether you're a student preparing for exams, an entrepreneur building a business, an artist creating something meaningful, or simply someone trying to live with greater peace of mind, the lessons in this book can help you perform better and feel more in control of your thoughts. By the end of this journey, you'll understand why some people consistently produce extraordinary work while others remain busy but achieve very little. You'll discover why your emotions sometimes overpower your concentration, why your mind keeps returning to the same worries, how willpower actually works, and what simple habits can strengthen your ability to stay focused for longer periods. So settle in, remove every distraction around you, and let's begin discovering one of the most powerful skills you can ever develop. Imagine standing in the middle of a crowded marketplace. Hundreds of conversations are happening around you. Vendors are calling customers, vehicles are passing by, children are laughing, music is playing somewhere in the distance, and yet suddenly someone quietly speaks your name. Even among all that noise, your attention immediately shifts toward that single voice. Why? Your ears heard thousands of sounds at the same moment, but your brain selected only one as important. This is how attention works. Every second, our senses collect an enormous amount of information. If our brain tried to process everything equally, we would become overwhelmed within moments. Instead, our attention acts like a filter. It decides what deserves our awareness and what can safely remain in the background. Most of us rarely notice this invisible filter. We simply experience the final result. We remember a conversation, solve a problem, enjoy a beautiful sunset, or recognize a friend's face without realizing that attention quietly made all of those experiences possible. In many ways, attention is like the director of a movie. The audience only sees what appears on the screen, but behind every scene, someone decided exactly where the camera should point. Your attention works in exactly the same way. Wherever it points, your mind begins building your experience of reality. Think about someone who constantly reads negative news from the moment they wake up. Every day they see stories about conflict, economic problems, accidents, and fear. Gradually, they begin believing the entire world is falling apart. Now think about another person who intentionally spends time learning new skills, reading inspiring books, appreciating nature, and surrounding themselves with optimistic people. Their world feels completely different. Did the world itself change? Not necessarily. What changed was where each person directed their attention. Your attention doesn't simply observe reality, it shapes the reality you experience. This doesn't mean ignoring problems or pretending everything is perfect. It means recognizing that your mind cannot give equal importance to everything. Every moment you choose what deserves your mental energy. Those choices slowly become your habits. Your habits become your mindset. Your mindset eventually becomes your life. Have you ever decided to buy something and suddenly started noticing it everywhere? Maybe you were thinking about buying a blue bicycle. Before that day, bicycles hardly caught your eye. But after making that decision, it seemed as though blue bicycles appeared on every street. Of course, they were always there. The only difference was that your attention had been trained to notice them. The same principle applies to opportunities. Someone searching for excuses finds excuses everywhere. Someone searching for possibilities begins seeing opportunities hidden inside the same situations. Neither person is necessarily wrong. They are simply looking through different mental filters. This is why two people can experience the exact same event and walk away with completely different conclusions. One person sees failure, Another sees a lesson. One sees criticism. Another sees valuable feedback. One sees uncertainty. Another sees possibility. Their circumstances may be identical, but their attention creates entirely different experiences. Now imagine directing that same power toward your goals. Every great achievement begins long before success becomes visible. It begins when someone repeatedly chooses to focus on what truly matters instead of reacting to every distraction that appears. Unfortunately, modern life makes this increasingly difficult. Our phones are designed to capture our attention. Social media platforms compete to keep us scrolling. Advertisements fight for a few seconds of our awareness. Streaming services automatically play the next episode before we even decide whether we want to continue watching. Without realizing it, we begin living reactively instead of intentionally. Our attention is constantly pulled from one thing to another, leaving very little energy for deep thinking or meaningful work. This constant switching comes at a hidden cost. Every time your mind jumps from studying to checking a message, then to social media, then back to work, your brain must repeatedly rebuild its concentration. It feels like trying to drive a car while stopping every few hundred meters. You still move forward, but far more slowly than if you had simply continued driving. Many people mistake busyness for productivity. They answer emails, reply to messages, attend meetings, and constantly multitask throughout the day. By evening, they feel exhausted, yet they struggle to point toward anything truly meaningful they accomplished. Being busy is not the same as being focused, and learning that difference may be one of the most important turning points in your life. If focus is the engine behind meaningful work, then the biggest threat to that engine isn't a lack of knowledge. It isn't a lack of talent. More often than not, it's our emotions. Think back to a day when you had planned to accomplish something important. Maybe you were going to study for an exam, finish a presentation, write an article, or finally begin a personal project that had been waiting for months. Everything was ready. You had enough time, enough energy, and a clear plan. Then something unexpected happened. Perhaps someone criticized you. Maybe you had an argument with a friend. Maybe you received disappointing news or started worrying about an upcoming challenge. Suddenly, even though your body remained in the same room, your mind had traveled somewhere else. You tried to continue working, but your thoughts kept replaying the same conversation again and again. Every few minutes, you found yourself imagining different outcomes, creating new arguments in your head, or wondering what you should have said instead. Hours passed, yet very little work was completed. This experience is incredibly common, and it reveals something important about attention. Our focus doesn't disappear without a reason. Very often, it is pulled away by emotions that our brain considers more important than the task in front of us. Your mind has one primary responsibility: keeping you safe. Long before humans worried about deadlines, grades, or business meetings, our ancestors had to survive in dangerous environments. Their brains evolved to notice anything that might threaten their well-being. That ancient survival system still exists inside us today. The problem is that our brains often react to emotional discomfort as if it were physical danger. An awkward conversation, a disappointing email, a mistake at work, a fear about the future. To the logical part of your brain, these situations may not be life-threatening. But emotionally, your attention treats them as urgent. That's why one uncomfortable event can dominate your thoughts for hours or even days. Many people become frustrated when this happens. They tell themselves to stop thinking about it. They try to force the thoughts away. Ironically, that usually makes the thoughts even stronger. Imagine someone telling you, whatever you do, don't picture a giant elephant wearing sunglasses. What happened? Within seconds, your mind created exactly that image. Our attention doesn't work well with commands like, don't think about it. Instead, it keeps checking whether we're still thinking about it, bringing the thought back each time. So what should we do instead? The answer begins by understanding the difference between worrying and reflecting. At first glance, they seem almost identical. Both involve thinking about a problem. Both can happen quietly inside your mind. But they lead to completely different results. Worrying is like running on a treadmill. You expend enormous energy, yet you never actually move forward. Reflection is like walking toward a destination. Every thought takes you one step closer to understanding or solving the problem. Imagine a student who receives poor marks on an important exam. One response might sound like, "I'm terrible at studying. I'll never improve. Everyone else is smarter than me. What if I fail again?" Notice what happened. The mind keeps circling around the same fear without producing any useful action. Now compare that with another response. "I didn't perform well. Why? Did I start preparing too late? Was my revision strategy ineffective? Which topics caused the most difficulty? What can I change before the next exam?" The same situation, the same disappointment. But now the thinking moves toward a solution instead of remaining trapped inside the problem. This is one of the most powerful habits you can develop. Whenever you notice yourself replaying the same thought repeatedly, pause for a moment and ask a simple question. Is this thought helping me solve the problem, or is it only helping me stay worried? That single question can completely change the direction of your attention. Sometimes the answer will be obvious. You'll realize you've been imagining scenarios that may never happen. Other times, you'll discover one practical action you can take immediately. Maybe it's making a phone call, sending an apology, creating a better plan, learning a missing skill, or simply accepting something that cannot be changed. Acceptance is often misunderstood. Many people think accepting reality means giving up. It doesn't. Acceptance simply means stopping the fight against facts that already exist. Imagine standing in the rain while shouting at the clouds to disappear. You could spend the entire afternoon complaining about the weather, but the rain wouldn't stop because of your frustration. Instead, you pick up an umbrella and continue walking. The rain may still be there, but it no longer controls your journey. Life works the same way. Some situations can be changed. Others cannot. The faster you recognize the difference, the more attention becomes available for things you actually have the power to influence. There's another reason endless worrying becomes so exhausting. Every unresolved thought quietly consumes mental energy. Think of your attention as the battery inside your phone. When dozens of applications keep running in the background, the battery drains much faster, even if you aren't actively using those apps. Your brain behaves in a remarkably similar way. Every unfinished conflict, every unresolved decision, every promise you keep delaying, every fear you refuse to face, each one continues running quietly in the background, stealing a little bit of your attention throughout the day. Eventually, you feel mentally exhausted without understanding why. This is why successful people often appear calm even during difficult situations. It's not because they experience fewer problems. It's because they learn to process those problems instead of carrying them endlessly. They decide, they act, they adapt, then they move forward. Imagine carrying a backpack. Every time you refuse to deal with an emotional burden, another heavy stone is placed inside. At first, you barely notice the extra weight. But after weeks, months, or even years, the backpack becomes so heavy that every step feels exhausting. The interesting part is that many of those stones were never permanent. They remained because no one took the time to unpack them. Your attention works the same way. The clearer your mind becomes, the easier it is to direct your energy toward learning, creating, solving problems, and building the future you want. And perhaps that's one of the greatest misunderstandings about focus. Focus isn't simply the ability to concentrate. It's also the ability to let go. Because every unnecessary thought you release creates space for a meaningful one to grow. And once you understand that, you begin realizing that mastering attention isn't about forcing your mind to work harder. It's about teaching your mind what truly deserves its energy. Now that we understand how emotions can either strengthen or steal our attention, let's explore another question. If focus is a skill, can it actually be trained? The answer is yes. Just as your muscles become stronger through exercise, your attention becomes stronger through practice. The challenge is that most people unknowingly train themselves to become more distracted every single day. Think about your daily routine. You open your laptop to work on an important assignment. Within 5 minutes, a notification appears. You quickly check it. While checking that notification, you notice another message. Then you remember an email you forgot to reply to. Before long, you're watching a completely unrelated video or scrolling through social media. None of these actions feels significant on its own. But together, they shape your brain. Every time you allow your attention to jump from one thing to another, you're teaching your mind that distraction is normal. Over weeks and months, concentrating on one task begins to feel uncomfortable, while constant stimulation starts feeling Natural. The good news is that the brain can be trained in the opposite direction as well. One of the best examples of this comes from observing children. Imagine placing a delicious dessert in front of a child and telling them, if you wait 15 minutes without eating it, you'll receive 2 desserts instead of 1. Some children immediately grab the first one. Others somehow manage to wait. For years, people believed that the children who waited simply had stronger self-control. But when researchers observed them more carefully, they discovered something fascinating. The successful children weren't spending 15 minutes staring at the dessert while fighting temptation. Instead, they changed what they paid attention to. Some looked out of the window. Others started singing quietly to themselves. Some imagined they were playing a game. A few even covered the dessert so they wouldn't have to look at it. They didn't defeat temptation through endless struggle. They defeated it by redirecting their attention. This teaches us an incredibly important lesson. Willpower isn't only about saying no. It's about choosing what deserves your attention. Think about someone trying to reduce screen time. If they spend the entire evening thinking, I must not check my phone. I must not check my phone. I must not check my phone. What are they actually focusing on? The phone. Their attention remains connected to the very thing they're trying to avoid. Now imagine another person. Instead of constantly resisting the phone, they become completely absorbed in learning guitar, reading an exciting novel, building a business, painting, exercising, or spending quality time with family. Notice the difference. The first person is fighting temptation. The second person is replacing temptation. That small difference changes everything. Our minds naturally move toward whatever feels meaningful. If you only remove distractions without replacing them with something valuable, your attention will eventually drift back to old habits. That's why simply deleting social media apps rarely solves the deeper problem. Distraction isn't always the disease. Sometimes it's only the symptom. The real question is this: what deserves my full attention? People with remarkable focus almost always have a clear answer. They know what they're building. They know what matters most. They know why today's work contributes to tomorrow's life. That sense of purpose becomes like a compass. Imagine sailing across the ocean without a destination. Every wave changes your direction. Every wind decides your path. But if you know exactly where you're going, small storms become temporary obstacles instead of permanent detours. Goals work in the same way. When your future is clear, today's distractions lose much of their power. Before reacting to every message, every notification, or every opportunity, your mind automatically asks, does this move me closer to where I want to go? If the answer is no, it becomes much easier to ignore. This doesn't mean your life should become rigid or joyless. In fact, the opposite is true. People who protect their attention often enjoy their free time more because they aren't carrying the guilt of unfinished work. When it's time to work, they work deeply. When it's time to rest, they rest completely. Most people do neither. They work while thinking about entertainment. Then they relax while worrying about unfinished work. As a result, both activities become less satisfying. Real focus creates freedom because it allows your mind to stay fully present wherever you are. Imagine having a conversation with someone who keeps checking their phone every 30 seconds. Even if they hear your words, you know they aren't truly listening. Now imagine someone who gives you their complete attention. No interruptions, no wandering eyes, no divided mind. You immediately feel respected. Attention is one of the greatest gifts we can offer another human being. The same principle applies to our own dreams. Every meaningful goal deserves more than leftover attention. It deserves your best attention. Unfortunately, our culture often celebrates multitasking. People proudly claim they can answer emails while attending meetings, listening to podcasts while studying, or watching television while working. But what feels efficient often reduces the quality of everything. Imagine trying to read 2 different books at exactly the same time. Impossible. Your attention can switch rapidly between them, but it cannot fully understand both simultaneously. Your brain works similarly with almost every complex task. Each switch creates a small cost. It may only take a few seconds to regain concentration, but when those interruptions happen dozens or even hundreds of times each day, the lost time becomes enormous. More importantly, the quality of your thinking begins to suffer. Deep ideas rarely arrive during constant interruptions. Creativity needs space. Insight needs silence. Can appear only after your attention has remained with one problem long enough to understand it completely. Think about a sculptor creating a masterpiece from a block of stone. If someone interrupted them every 2 minutes, asking unrelated questions, the sculpture would take far longer to complete. Your mind is no different. Meaningful work requires uninterrupted attention. That doesn't mean you need 8 hours of perfect concentration every day. Very few people can sustain that. Instead, even 1 or 2 periods of completely focused work can produce results that surprise you. Imagine giving one important task 60 minutes of your absolute best attention. No phone, no notifications, no switching between tabs, no unnecessary conversations, just complete presence. You may discover that one focused hour accomplishes more than an entire afternoon of distracted effort. This is why successful people often guard their attention so carefully. Not because they're antisocial, not because they're obsessed with work, but because they understand something most people overlook. Every yes to a distraction becomes a quiet no to something more meaningful. Every minute spent feeding unnecessary noise is a minute taken away from building the life you truly want. And the beautiful thing is that focus isn't reserved for extraordinary people. It's built through ordinary decisions made consistently. One decision at a time. One distraction ignored. One meaningful hour protected. Day after day. Until concentration is no longer something you force. It simply becomes part of who you are. As important as focus is, there is another truth that many ambitious people ignore. Your mind cannot remain intensely focused forever. We often admire people who seem endlessly productive. They wake up early, work long hours, manage multiple responsibilities, and still appear energetic. Looking at them from the outside, it's easy to believe that successful people simply have more mental strength than everyone else. But the reality is very different. The most productive people aren't the ones who force themselves to work without stopping. They're the ones who understand when to stop. Imagine trying to hold a heavy dumbbell with your arm stretched straight out in front of you. For the first few seconds, it feels manageable. After a minute, your arm begins to shake. Eventually, even though the weight hasn't become heavier, your muscles can no longer support it. Your attention behaves in exactly the same way. Deep concentration demands energy. Every decision you make, every problem you solve, every paragraph you read, and every idea you analyze consumes a small amount of your mental resources. At first, you barely notice it. But after hours of continuous effort, your brain begins sending signals. You read the same sentence 3 times. You make simple mistakes. You become impatient over small problems. Your creativity fades. Your motivation disappears. Many people interpret these signs as laziness. In reality, they are often signs of mental fatigue. The problem is that our culture sometimes glorifies exhaustion. People proudly say things like, "I only slept 4 hours. I've been working all day. I haven't taken a break since morning." As if being constantly exhausted is proof of dedication. But exhaustion doesn't always produce excellence. More often, it reduces the quality of your thinking. Imagine trying to sharpen a knife by cutting more vegetables. The harder you keep cutting, the duller the blade becomes. Eventually, the smartest thing you can do isn't to keep cutting. It's to stop and sharpen the blade. Your mind deserves the same respect. Rest is not the opposite of productivity. Rest is part of productivity. Think about professional athletes. No champion spends every hour lifting weights. Training sessions are followed by recovery. Muscles grow while resting, not while lifting. The workout creates the challenge. Recovery creates the improvement. Our brains operate in much the same way. Many of our best ideas don't appear while we're desperately forcing ourselves to think. They arrive later, perhaps during a quiet walk, while taking a shower, while sitting in a park, or just before falling asleep. Have you ever struggled with a difficult problem for hours, only to discover the solution after stepping away for a while? It almost feels magical, but there's nothing magical about it. When you stop forcing your attention toward one narrow point, your brain begins connecting ideas in the background. It's still working, just differently. That's why moments of relaxation often produce breakthroughs that endless effort cannot. Unfortunately, many people mistake relaxation for distraction. Scrolling endlessly through social media may feel relaxing, but it often overloads the brain with even more information. Watching dozens of short videos one after another rarely gives your attention an opportunity to recover. Your eyes may be resting from work, but your mind is still consuming stimulation. True mental recovery is different. It allows your attention to slow down instead of constantly reacting. Think about the feeling of sitting beside a quiet lake, walking through a forest, watching rain fall outside your window, listening to birds early in the morning, or simply sitting on a balcony without checking your phone. These moments seem ordinary, yet they quietly restore something modern life continuously drains. Nature has an incredible ability to calm the mind because it doesn't demand constant decisions. A tree doesn't ask you to like, share, subscribe, comment, or swipe. A river doesn't compete for your attention. The wind doesn't interrupt your thoughts with notifications. Nature simply exists, and that simplicity gives your brain permission to breathe. You don't have to climb mountains or disappear into the wilderness for weeks. Sometimes 10 peaceful minutes outside can completely change the quality of your afternoon. If that's not possible, even stepping away from your workspace, stretching your body, taking a few slow breaths, or looking at the sky for a moment can interrupt the cycle of mental exhaustion. The key is intentional recovery. Instead of waiting until you're completely burned out, learn to recharge before your attention collapses. Think of your energy like the battery on your phone. Most of us wait until it reaches 1% before searching for a charger. Wouldn't it make more sense to recharge when the battery reaches 40 or 50%? Your brain deserves the same care. Small breaks taken at the right time often prevent hours of unproductive work later. But there's another kind of rest that may be even more important. Sleep. It sounds obvious, yet it's one of the first things people sacrifice when life becomes busy. Ironically, reducing sleep in order to gain extra working hours often produces the opposite result. You might gain 2 additional hours. But if your concentration drops by 30 or 40% the next day, were those extra hours really worth it? High-quality thinking depends on a well-rested brain. Memory improves. Learning becomes easier. Decision-making becomes sharper. Patience increases. Creativity returns. Sleep isn't stealing time from your goals. It's preparing your mind to reach them. Imagine trying to build a skyscraper on weak foundations. No matter how beautiful the upper floors look, the structure eventually becomes unstable. Sleep, rest, and recovery form the foundation of everything your mind creates. Ignore them for long enough, and even the strongest ambitions begin to crumble. There's another habit that quietly restores attention, yet many people overlook it because it seems too simple. Silence. We spend so much of our lives surrounded by constant sound. Music during workouts, podcasts while driving, videos during meals, television before bed, notifications throughout the day. Many people haven't experienced complete silence in weeks. At first, silence feels uncomfortable. Your thoughts become louder. You suddenly notice worries that were hidden beneath constant entertainment. But if you stay with that silence for a little while, something remarkable begins to happen. Your mind gradually settles. Thoughts become clearer. You stop reacting automatically. You begin observing instead of constantly consuming. Silence creates space, and within that space, focus quietly returns. The goal isn't to eliminate entertainment from your life. The goal is simply to create moments where your attention belongs entirely to you. Because if every free moment is immediately filled with external stimulation, your mind never gets the opportunity to reset itself. Remember this: working harder is not always the answer. Sometimes the greatest improvement comes from knowing exactly when to pause. Because a rested mind doesn't just work longer, it works better. And when your attention is restored, every hour that follows becomes more meaningful, more productive, and far more enjoyable. There is one final habit that ties everything together, a practice so simple that many people underestimate its power, yet so profound that it has transformed the lives of athletes, entrepreneurs, artists, scientists, and leaders around the world. That practice is learning to observe your own mind. Most of us spend our entire lives reacting to our thoughts without ever questioning them. A thought appears, and we immediately believe it. An emotion rises, and we assume it represents reality. A fear enters our mind, and we begin planning our lives around it. But what if every thought doesn't deserve your attention? Imagine you're sitting beside a busy highway. Cars pass by every few seconds. Some are fast, some are slow, some are noisy, and others are almost silent. Would you chase every single? Of course not. You simply watch them come and go. Now, imagine your thoughts as those passing vehicles. Some thoughts deserve your attention because they contain useful information. Others are simply mental noise. The challenge is that most people jump into every passing thought as though it were the most important vehicle on the road. One anxious thought becomes 10. 10 become 50. Soon, the mind is completely occupied by stories that may never happen. This is where mindfulness becomes incredibly valuable. Mindfulness isn't about emptying your mind. It isn't about forcing yourself to stop thinking. That's impossible. The human mind was designed to think. Instead, mindfulness teaches you to notice your thoughts without immediately following them. Imagine sitting quietly for just 5 minutes. Close your eyes. Take a slow breath. Almost immediately, your mind will begin wandering. Perhaps you'll remember something you forgot to do. Maybe you'll think about tomorrow's schedule. Maybe you'll replay an old conversation. Or maybe you'll start wondering whether you're meditating correctly. This is completely normal. The goal isn't to stop these thoughts. The goal is simply to notice them. Every time you realize your attention has wandered and gently bring it back to your breathing, you're strengthening your focus. Think of it like lifting a weight at the gym. One repetition doesn't build strong muscles. Hundreds of repetitions over time do. Meditation works in much the same way. Each moment you guide your attention back to the present is another repetition for your mind. At first, it feels surprisingly difficult. You may discover that your attention wanders every few seconds. Don't become discouraged. That isn't failure. In fact, noticing that your attention has wandered is the very skill you're trying to develop. Over time, something remarkable begins to happen. You start catching distractions earlier. Instead of spending 30 minutes lost in worry, you notice it after 5. Instead of reacting immediately to anger, you pause long enough to choose a better response. Instead of becoming overwhelmed by every notification, you begin deciding whether it truly deserves your attention. This small gap between stimulus and response changes everything. Within that gap lives freedom. Because once you realize you can choose where your attention goes, you stop becoming a prisoner of every passing thought. This awareness doesn't only improve concentration. It improves relationships. Imagine someone criticizing you. Without awareness, you react instantly. Perhaps you become defensive. Maybe you say something you'll later regret. But with practice, something different happens. You notice the emotional reaction beginning inside you. You take a slow breath. Instead of reacting automatically, you respond intentionally. The conversation changes, not because the other person changed. Because you did. The same principle applies to fear. Suppose you're about to give an important presentation. Your heart starts beating faster. Your palms become sweaty. Your mind whispers, "What if I embarrass myself?" Without awareness, that thought grows stronger. Soon, you're imagining failure before you've even spoken a single word. But with mindfulness, you notice the thought. You acknowledge it. Then you gently return your attention to your preparation. The fear may still exist, but it no longer controls you. This ability becomes even more valuable in today's digital world. Every app on your phone is competing for one limited resource. Not your money, not your time, your attention. Because wherever attention goes, time eventually follows. And wherever time goes, your life follows. Think about that carefully. Your life is ultimately the sum of what you've paid attention to over many years. If most of your attention goes toward learning, growing, building meaningful relationships, and pursuing worthwhile goals, your life gradually reflects those choices. If your attention is constantly scattered across endless distractions, comparison, negativity, and meaningless entertainment, those habits quietly shape your future as well. Every single day, you are investing your attention somewhere. The question is, are you investing it wisely? Imagine receiving $1 million every morning. There's only one condition. Whatever money you don't spend by midnight disappears forever. Most people would become extremely careful about how they used it. Yet every morning, each of us receives something even more valuable. A fresh supply of attention. Unlike money, attention cannot be borrowed. It cannot be saved for tomorrow. Once today's attention has been wasted, it's gone forever. This realization changes the way we approach life. Instead of asking, "How can I become more productive?" perhaps we should ask, "What deserves my attention today?" That single question has the power to transform your decisions. Does this conversation deserve my full presence? Does this habit move me closer to the person I want to become? Does this worry actually require my energy? Does this opportunity align with my purpose? The answers may not always be easy, but asking the questions is where wisdom begins. Throughout this journey, we've explored how attention shapes reality, how emotions influence focus, why endless worrying drains our energy, how willpower grows by redirecting attention, why deep work creates extraordinary results, why genuine rest restores the mind, and how mindfulness strengthens our ability to choose what truly matters. Taken individually, each lesson is powerful. Together, they reveal something much greater. Focus isn't simply a productivity tool, it's a way of living. Every meaningful relationship requires attention. Every great skill requires attention. Every important dream requires attention. Every unforgettable memory begins with attention. Where your attention goes, your future quietly follows. So as you finish listening today, don't try to change your entire life overnight. Instead, choose one small habit. Maybe you'll spend 30 uninterrupted minutes working on your biggest goal. Maybe you'll take a peaceful walk without your phone. Maybe you'll meditate for 5 minutes tomorrow morning. Maybe you'll simply become more aware of where your attention goes throughout the day. Small changes, repeated consistently, create extraordinary results over time. Remember, your attention is one of the most valuable gifts you'll ever possess. Protect it, strengthen it, direct it wisely, because the quality of your focus ultimately becomes the quality of your life. Thank you for spending your time with us here on Volume and Vision. If you found this book summary valuable, don't forget to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications so you never miss our next deep dive into life-changing books and timeless ideas. Until next time, keep learning, keep growing, and most importantly, keep your focus on the life you truly want to build.